Welcome, friends, to another Wolff Responds. I want to call this one The Dilemmas of Europe. And I want to talk to you about what the meanings are of this bizarre collection of foreign policy initiatives, I'm being polite, coming from the Trump regime. And I want to begin by talking about Europe, but I'll have some things to say about Panama and Greenland and Canada and Mexico and so on. The story of Europe is a story that begins and probably ends with the decline of the American empire. The United States inherited actively the declining empire of Britain. There's a certain historical irony here because the United States, of course, was a part of the British Empire before, in a violent revolution, it separated itself from the British in two wars, the War of Independence and then the war again in 1812 to reaffirm that independence. And so there's a certain irony that across the 19th century, the British Empire had a harder and harder time holding on, and the United States, as an independent country, came more and more to represent one of the two major challenges to the British Empire. The other one was Germany. In World War I, the Germans and the British destroyed each other, and that left the field entirely to the United States, which, starting with the end of World War I, organized and consolidated its own empire, which it used and grew for almost a century, till around 2010, 2015. At that point, the American empire peaked and began its decline. Yes, these numbers of dates are just signposts. They're not the exact time. These are processes that last for years, and they're just signposts, these dates I give you, not to be looked at in any rigid sort of way. You might have seen the American empire's decline in its defeat in the war in Vietnam. That was way back in 1975. Or its defeat in the Afghan war at the beginning of this century, or in the Iraq adventure in years after that, or in the loss of Ukraine, which is going on as we speak. And you could have seen it in other ways too. One that I've stressed over recent months is the rise of a real economic competitor, which the United States didn't have in the 19th century, what with the declining British Empire, what with the defeat of the German effort at an empire in World War I, and so on. So in the United States, we have now to face that China and its allies, the BRICS, are a formidable alternative economic and therefore political and very soon to be military adversary of a comparable size. The Soviet Union was never an economic adversary. It was always much too poor and much too less developed industrially. China has neither of those problems because of its spectacular outgrowing of the United States economy over the last 30 to 40 years. What we see in the Trump administration is, as is typical, the delayed political response to the changed global reality. And by that I mean the declining US empire, which can no longer be mistaken if you're honest and if you look at real problems, which always at least a portion of American leaders do. You can't continue. The signs are everywhere. The debt level in this country out of control. The government running trillion-dollar deficits as its debts outgrow its GDP on a scale that has worried equivalent policymakers around the world for a long time. No, you can't go on as usual. What are you going to do? The Chinese are out competing you in one industry after another. With that shock recently of the DeepSeek showing that even in the most advanced levels of high tech, the United States has a very serious economic competitor. So Mr. Trump is doing what whoever had become president would have had to do sooner or later. Yes, the Democrats are more stuck in the old political patterns that went with the United States being on top. We might have expected the Republicans to stick in the mud that way, and many of them did, the Bushes and all of those folks. But there were the newcomers, the outsiders, and they were able to see it a little clearer, a little sooner. The Trumps and those he gathers around him. Are they seeing clearly? No. They are lost in ideology as deeply as anyone. But they do see that something has to change because the trajectory of the United States is downward compared to the position it had in the world. And on that, Trump's quite right. And so he's doing what his ideology dictates, plus a little more because he sees that things have to change. But he's still stuck in the old ideology. Let me explain. In order to become stronger and thereby push against the weakening of the American global position, he reverts to a kind of 18th century crude colonialism. He's going to take Canada and make it a 51st state. He's going to take the Panama Canal. He's going to snatch Greenland. These are extraordinary acts, directly hurting and confronting allies. Panama, Canada, Denmark. No conversation, no meetings, implicit threats of military, but simply, we're going to take it. Like we're going to take Gaza. From whom, how, where? No. It's the colonial impulse. Very strange. And now the one in Europe. We're going to say to the Europeans, bye-bye. We're not protecting you anymore. We're not going to finance your wars anymore. We're out. We need to take care of our business at home, and you either give us the equivalent of what we give you, or all the rest is over. And indeed, he wants to say that to the whole world. He's drawing in to save money, to avoid the extra borrowing of the deficits he inherited from Mr. Biden. He wants to continue the tax cuts, of course, that he gave to the business and the rich in 2017. And how's he going to do that without borrowing and therefore violating his promise not to do that? How's he going to cope with all the foreign and domestic difficulties of a declining empire? Well, one of the things he's doing is savaging our U.S. allies and friends. The Canadians, the Mexicans, the Danes, the Panamanians. Wow. Now the Europeans. Wow. In the short run, it'll help him do at least some of what he knows needs to be done. And the alternative that he inherited was to do nothing and hope somehow that would solve the problem, which it hasn't in the past, and it wouldn't have in the future either. But here's the thing that ought to worry us all. What he is doing is like the people who have no longer in the wintertime a reliable source of heat. So one of the folks in the family gets the clever idea, rip the clapboards off the side of the house and throw them into the fireplace. The resulting fire will make heat in the house. It will. It'll be more comfortable. The winter will be less troubling. But grandma's words will show the wisdom. If you burn the clapboards of your own house, the comfort and the heat will be in the short run. In the long run, you make your problems worse. That's where we are. And if that's a grim situation, then thank the predecessors of Mr. Trump and now Mr. Trump for not seeing the situation in the way it ought to be, but reacting too bluntly, too quickly, too exaggeratedly, and too trapped within the old ideologies to get us out of this one. The decline of the American empire will continue. If interventions like this strike you as interesting and worth considering, please share this video with friends, neighbors, people who might find it interesting as well. And of course, if you're interested in supporting this, donations will be welcome with enormous appreciation. Just go to our website and you will find out how to do that. Thank you.